come a little closer and lend me your ears. Don't worry, you keep yours while I keep mine.
In each episode, we'll dig into the major stories, uncover the truth, and retrieve gems from Yada's blog.
We'll discuss what's right, bark about what's wrong, wag our tails at the thrill of discovery, and take you on adventures through the exciting world we live in today. So, fasten your curiosity leash and get ready.
Right then, coming to you with another episode of the Yada's Vlog on a Blog. Tomorrow's news, disseminated today. Let's dive in.
Smiling because the Wook, the master of ceremonies here that just introduced us, is grinning from ear to ear. We call him. There he is. Yep, he decided that. Yep, he is here and he is on duty. He is ready to go. He's actually looking at the teleprompter, wanting to know what I should cue up next. So we have a highly professional staff here, as you can tell. Hello, Will. Good to see you, pal.
Thank you. Good seeing you, Yada. Excited for today. Looks like we got some great stuff.
Yeah, we do. The first up is the first signs that Israelis are absolutely and totally and completely fed up with the Haredi. This is you played this one. This one's a beauty. As a woman gets out of her car and she maces them, pepper sprays them. There you go. I would put her against 20 Haredi men and boys, and I think she'd whip them all.
Oh yeah,
pepper spray for all. Yep, it's just like she's fumigating the room with the bug spray. We do that, and then but you see the one guy, he tried to hit her with her purse, and then 2022 there, he shows you don't hit women with purses there, pal, not where I come from. That was pretty impressive. And we are smiling here watching this because we think that the worst form of life on the planet are not actually jihadi. They are not actually Hamas. They're not Hezbollah. No, they're Haredi. You can call them whatever you want to. In different parts of the world, they have different names, but ultra-Orthodox practitioners of Judaism, I think, are the lowest form of life on the planet. So it's about time that Israel treat them appropriately. And I think that's appropriately.
Parasites from the inside are always worse than the ones from the outside. I mean, you can see the ones coming from the outside, but the parasites from the inside just...
Yep. So Israel is at war with itself, both externally and internally. And this is really a tough time for Israel. And they already picked a really, really bad time to push for more subsidies for them to waste everybody's time in their yeshivas studying the absurd Talmud, which breeds that kind of behavior, and continue to allow them to vote for coalition government that they end up controlling so that they don't even have to defend their country.
Yeah, read the room, fellas.
People.
Read the room. Bad time to ask for more.
Yeah, well, they don't. They're not very bright.
No.
The Easter egg and the Bible. Yes. He is so full of himself. Boy, I found it. I found the Easter egg. Pal, Easter happens to be Ishtar Day. And it happens to be entirely Babylonian and pagan. And the very fact you have a Ishtar Day and an Easter egg may mean that you are a nincompoop. Just saying, maybe his great discovery is that when Jesus was being crucified, and we're going to mock that too because there was no Jesus. And in fact, the first Jesus didn't even appear until the 17th century. So we can pretty much be assured there was no Jeebus back in the day. When he was being crucified, he cited the opening line of Psalm 22. And therefore, he was telling the rabbis that they were dogs. No, idiot. 22nd Psalm was written in first person.
That's right.
Now, do you know what first person means? I mean, come on there. You got your glasses on, so I think you can probably read, right? What does first person mean? It was written by David, in first person. And so when he describes crucifixion in first person, who's being crucified?
Dode.
Oh, yeah, Dode.
Grammar.
Yeah.
The writer.
I know grammar. That grammar thing. I guess they didn't teach grammar the last couple of generations that went through school. But when somebody signs something that says, "This is from me," and you present the character being crucified in first person, guess who's being crucified?
Yep. Yeah.
So what right do you have to apply that to a person who isn't named? Dode is named. Jebus ain't named. Not there, not anywhere. Think it through. I mean, you have to be so ridiculously stupid to be a Christian and cite anything from the Torah, prophets, and Psalms to think that it proves your case when there is no Christ, there is no Jesus, there are no prophecies that support anything that is attributed to the misnomer, and that all the prophecies are attributed to Dode, who's the one that fulfilled them. How do you think that God's so stupid? Is your God so stupid he doesn't know his son's name? He doesn't know who he anointed as Messiah? Is that how stupid your God is? Must be. Look at the people who follow him.
This guy goes on to say that, when the Pharisees put Jesus on the cross, and he cited the opening of my God, why have you forsaken me? They knew the Psalms by the Torah by heart, so they knew what was going on, who he was supposed to be. And it's like the Pharisees didn't put him on the cross, man. It's like
but it says that in the Christian Bible, so they're convinced that it happened. Even when all evidence is to the contrary, that's the nature of religion. People will believe the opposite of what is proven true, no matter how ridiculous the lie. Pharisees and Jews did not crucify a person named Jesus. They didn't crucify anybody, not ever. They were the ones who were crucified. It is it's stunning. And if the Pharisees and the Sadducees knew their Torah, prophets, and Psalms by heart, and they knew what the 22nd Mizmor said, and they knew what Yeshaya 9 said, what Yeshaya 53 said, what all of the prophets said, they would know that it was Dode who was there fulfilling what he said he was going to fulfill. As a matter of fact, Stephen Dode tells us the exact day he's going to arrive to fulfill Chag Matzah in 33 CE. So if they were paying attention, they would have known it was Dode. If you were paying attention, you would know it's Dode. If you're paying attention, though, you wouldn't be a Christian. So obviously you're not paying attention.
Yeah, this Ishtar egg, the only thing it's going to give you is a one-way tick to Sheol.
It will. But there'll be a lot of Ishtar eggs there. I bet they're going to have an Easter egg hunt with the Easter bunny and Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. Jesus is no different than the Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, and Peter Pan. So enjoy.
Illusion, yeah.
Oh, this may be the most repulsive piece of shit that I've ever heard a person vomit out of their mouths. That they claim that they don't say the name Yahweh because they just respect him too much. And if they said the name, it would make it too common. So if I respected your name and you wrote a long essay on who you were and what our relationship was all about, and I named you after me, Yahud, and I said that I only have one name, and this is the one name I want to be called for all time, and you went and erased my name. Every time I said my name, you erased it. And then you erased your name from my name because he's calling himself Jews. Guess what Jew doesn't have in it? Yah. What does Yahud have in it? Yah. You erased God's name from your own name, asshole. Because you're disgusted by it. That's what happened. You're absolutely disgusted by God's name, and he is disgusted by you. He hates you.
This isn't reverence,
the truth.
Yada. This is defiance. That's
It's
exactly what it
absolute
is. It
defiance.
is not reverence. How are
course.
you being reverent and respectful by not using Yahweh's name when that's the name that separates him from everyone else? And he asked you to use that name.
Right.
You made that
Yeah.
connection between them, between Yah's name and them. When they hid God's name, they became Jews.
Yeah.
Might as well
When God
become-
says the one thing that that you need to know is this is my name and my name is set apart. That means that when you use his name, you are being respectful and not associating Yahweh with any other God. When you erase his name, you're doing the opposite. You're being disrespectful and you're making your God as common as every other piece of shit God every religion has ever made. You are a piece of crap, pal. And I'm going to tell you, based upon what you just did, because maybe you ought to bother to read the third statement that Yahweh etched in stone. And what he said is, I will never forgive anybody who negates my name. What do you think that means there, pal? Huh?
It means he's
Come on.
screwed.
It means you're screwed is what it is. It means you're a disgusting liar. That means your religion is based on a lie. That's what it means. Go ahead and open your Talmuds again. And you tell me what the third statement says that Yahweh etched in stone. I will never forgive anybody who negates my name, Yahweh. And you've got a religion based upon it. You even defined your people by it, going from Yehud to Jew.
And their argument hinges on this idea of holy, where it is a complete misrepresentation of what Kodesh, set apart, is. Because their idea is that it's holy, okay, and it brings up all these religious ideas. But when it's set apart, you use the name. That is the reverence. You are setting yourself apart unto Yahweh.
He is so effing guilty of condemning himself here, because he says that he uses Hashem and he writes G-D because he doesn't want to profane God's name, making it common. What is the antithesis of common? Set apart, unique, special. God says his name is set apart. It is special. It is uncommon. Therefore, if you use his name, you are honoring his description of it, which is making him uncommon. When you erase God's name, you have committed the very thing you are using to justify your stupidity. Your argument is a rational fallacy. And of course, you have violated the unforgivable sin of the Torah, prophets, and Psalms. God wrote it very clearly. There's only one unforgivable sin from beginning to end in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, and that is the negation of Yahweh's name, which is the very basis of which Jew is, Judaism, and Hashem. And if you're a Jew and you're listening to me and you don't know the difference between Jew and Yehud, shame on you. If you don't know that Hashem is reprehensible and indefensible, shame on you. And if you continue to listen to these rabbinical religious types and their Torah trash, then you will follow them to Sheol, because that's where they're all headed. All of them. See you in 4 years, pal.
See you in 4 years.
See you in 4 years, pal. You're not going to like me very much there either. This is interesting. The top 14 countries on this list are all Islamic. And if they were to have listed all 50 to 55 Islamic countries, the top 50 to 55 on this list would all be Islamic. The question is, do you agree that your religion is the only one that should be allowed? And in every Islamic country, it's 90%, 95%, 98%, 85%, because there's some non-Muslims in those countries. But the very basic thing is here that if, according to the Quran, Islam is the only religion that is allowed, and Allah is the only God that anyone can acknowledge. That is what the Quran says. And so Muslims are the most intolerant people on earth. That is what the point is here. They are perpetrators of apartheid. And if you don't know that, then you're ignorant, because that is the truth. And you ought to recognize that, particularly if you're a socialist and you want to pretend that you're tolerant. The least tolerant religion in human history is Islam.
Yeah.
Simple
Yeah,
fact.
you need to tolerate us as we are a minority, and as soon as we are no longer a minority, the tolerance goes away. We no
Yes.
longer tolerate you.
That's correct.
Yeah.
You need to tolerate us when we're a minority, and when we're a majority, we will not tolerate you. Yeah, it's nature of the religion, and it's everywhere it's ever been.
Tax or death, those are your choices under Islam. Slavery or
Tax
death.
or death. Well, submission, tax or death.
So,
Oh, so in this picture here, this is early on 10/7. You've got a whole row of people that are actually, you can see little pieces of them kind of rolling, going up the hill. You see a whole row of people that are behind the tank, and you see people that are on the foreground before the tank, and those who are on the tank. So I'd like you to, since there's probably 30 or 40 people in that particular shot, and I could give you another 500 pictures like this. I want you to count the number of Hamas members there are. Please point them out to me.
You mean
Who's
look
Hamas
for
in it?
uniforms?
Yeah, look for somebody
Like a military
that's,
uniform?
it's got got the Hamas uniform, a Hamas weapon, a Hamas headband, anything that would associate them with Hamas.
Yep.
I'm waiting, please.
There's not a one.
they look like the
Not a
Cajun
one.
Navy.
Look like regular old Muslims to me.
Yeah, and different ages, anywhere from. By the way, starving, of course. They are. You can tell that the
Dude on
boy
the
on the
left.
left. Yeah, he's starving.
Hasn't eaten since lunch.
Yeah, since he ate he ate his own baby for breakfast. This is 10/7. This is the thing that the world and even Israel doesn't get about 10/7. 10/7, yes, was encouraged by Hamas, but Hamas is meaningless to 10/7. They were the vast minority of the assailants, and I know that there are those who want to say no, they were 2/3 of the 4,000. Some say there were 6,000. Some say there were 4,000. And some say that the 2/3 of them were Hamas. Some say 80% were Hamas. I tell you what, I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of photos, and the number is probably around 4,000. They came in 3 waves, and maybe 20% were Hamas. Maybe. That's the reality. And the only way that you can say elsewhere is to spew propaganda, because you want to define the problem as a terrorist group as opposed to a religion. But even if you assign it to Hamas, which would be invalid based upon the photographic evidence, all Hamas is an expression of Islam. They're not a corruption of Islam. They're not a special group of Islam. It's just an expression of Islam.
And if Hamas was going to do this as Hamas, they have uniforms, they have headbands, they have no problem whenever it's time to get on camera
Correct.
and return bodies to Israel, right?
Correct.
To
Correct.
show off their flags and their clean cut uniforms and stuff. So it's
I can
not
tell you
like-
that there were a number of Hamas that came through specifically to attack the Israeli outposts along the wall. And so there are places where you will see Hamas in uniform with assault rifles. Are usually M16 because America supplied most of them. But you'll see them in those places with their headbands, with their spiffy Hamas uniforms. And that was to go in and neutralize and kidnap the guard posts along the fence. And then there are a few places where they went in and shot up traffic and went into some of these communities. And they were some of the earlier in, but they were the minority. And that's important because you need to know who perpetrated 10:7.
Islam.
And it's Islam.
Yep.
Boy, we have so many Jews that are living in fantasy land. They know that something terrible has happened to them.
Yeah.
They know that Donald Trump has betrayed them, and they believed him, and that was a real shame. They have not read their prophets, so just like that previous cartoon. No, they have not read their prophets. They don't know their prophets. They read their Talmud. So they don't know that they're in the time of trouble. They don't know that America and Trump were prophesied to betray them. They don't know that they have turned the entire world against them. They don't know that their wars have been counterproductive. They don't know even that their Star of David is a symbol of shame. That is not something that they should have ever used, because it was the symbol of the Holocaust. And what a tragedy for them to use it. And of course, they're even referred to themselves as Jewish universe, not knowing that their only chance of survival is to become Yehud again. And they want this precious little strip with the same star that the Nazis used to march them off to the death camps, and their Greek kippah on their heads, and their pleurobranchi, and then they've got their Bach boys both on the head and on the arm, so they're embracing rabbinic Judaism, the very thing that got them into this mess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they think somehow that the sun behind them with that starburst is and their flag is going to be their savior. And guess what the only landmark is in that picture?
The mosque.
Yeah,
The
right.
Al-Aqsa Mosque. The
Dome of the
boil.
Rock. Yeah.
Look at how they cling. Look at how the lion, I guess the Lion of Judah, is clinging to that, and that's exactly what Israel's doing right now. They're going to cling until the heat gets turned up to a degree and a temperature that they cannot stand anymore, and then they're going to there'll be a remnant that pulls away. But this is what we were dealing with Yada for months on Twitter. They're clinging
Yes.
to customs.
Yes.
They're clinging to traditions, to rabbinic Judaism, and you can't pry them away. This
No.
picture is very accurate.
Yeah, that was the frustration of X, is that they were all gloating over their destruction of Gaza, and I said, no, you're committing suicide by destroying Gaza, and their destruction of Hezbollah. And I says, no, you're not going to. Beeper bombs were pretty clever, but you are not going to eradicate Hezbollah from Lebanon. It's never going to happen. And by attacking them, you're making more of them, and you're making them stronger, and you're making yourself weaker. And that by bombing Iran, when you have zero chance of regime change and zero chance of accomplishing any other mission, you can't defeat them. And if you can't defeat them, and you realize that a war between interceptor and missile, the interceptor always loses, even if it's successful. So what in the world are you doing? You need to get your head out of your tuchus and realize where you are. And you're estranged from God. He's really upset with you. He's disgusted by you. You're being torn apart between the Marxists and the ultra-Orthodox. So you're at a country at war with yourselves. You have the most hated man in the world as your prime minister. And you've now lost your lone ally, who, by the way, happened to be Rahab, Satan. So drop the myth. You've lost. It's checkmate. There is no hope for a nation of Israel at this point. There's no hope. It's gone. It's really over. You were checkmated.
They would be better served having a Hezekiah moment if they just brought the IDF into Israel, had a Hezekiah moment, and started tearing down churches, pushing out all the religious crap. I mean, we know it won't happen, but if they had a Hezekiah moment, then they would be better served having the IDF clear out Israel itself.
Nothing short of that's going to work, right, Kevin? I mean,
Right,
do you need to destroy all the religiosity and all the damage that it's caused before you can move on? That's the first thing you got to do. And Hezekiah asked for an extension of time because he knew he had to get that done before he could go forward.
They're not going to do that. They're just not going to do that. We've read the prophets. We know what happens. They are not going to do that. Yes, it's going to get so bad that there will be a remnant, but even the remnant is not going to be worth anything. They're not going to acknowledge Yahweh. They're not going to break away from religion. They're not going to break away from the politics. They're just going to be not as bad as the most belligerent political and religious Israelis and Jews, and therefore they are going to be deemed as salvageable when they're all cleaned up. But they're going to essentially be zeros at that point, which is much better than being negative, which is what most Jews are right now to God, is they're negative. He really, really dislikes them and what they have done. The Hezekiah moment where they came upon the Torah and then he implemented the Torah, that was possible because there weren't Muslims equaling the number of Jews in the midst of what you'd view now as Israel. There's as many Muslims as there are Jews, particularly when you include what's called the West Bank and Gaza, and the number that live within the state of Israel itself. It's about 7.5 million apiece. So they didn't have that problem. And the second is that there was no Talmud. There was no oral law. There was no Talmud. Yes, there was a lot of religious malfeasance, and it was from the neighboring cultures. But now they can't do that because their Talmud is more important to them, and their Jewish traditions are more important to them than the Torah. And the Torah has been hijacked by religious Jews, even though the Torah condemns religion. And so they're not going to have a Hezekiah moment. That's not going to happen.
They've gone too far for too long.
Yeah, it is true that God's not going to save them until all traces of religion are gone. But it is God and those who are serving him that are going to remove all traces of religion. It's going to happen on Teruah in 2033. And remnant will be spared as a result. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be some Jews who come to appreciate Yahweh and return to him as Yehud. That'll happen between now and the Teruah harvest. So there will be some, but they'll be relatively few. And all you're going to have is a remnant. And I can guarantee you that that remnant is not going to be clinging to a six-pointed star.
No.
5 of them, though, in that picture. This is funny. A prominent Muslim leader resigns. Starmer. And he works so hard to justify and overlook Muslim raping gangs and Muslim terrorism against his people. And it was just a disgusting suck up to Islam. As a liberal, that there is something in the socialist mindset that causes them to think that they should be partnering with and can successfully partner with Muslims. It's very much like the frog carrying the scorpion across the creek. It's going to kill you in the end. And they're just not aware of reality. They have their own alternative universe that they believe is from each according to their ability and to each according to their need. And I think that's a functional world, and that enlightened men in control of commerce and of all rules and morality are better than systems where individual responsibility and opportunity drive the results, and smaller government is better government. They don't know that world, and they have chosen, unfortunately, to partner with the most reprehensible religion ever conceived, the most anti-social religion ever conceived, the most anti-women religion ever conceived, most deadly religion ever conceived. The religion that is the most opposed to a liberal democracy ever conceived. And so you'd wonder, how in the world could somebody, and he's liberal, he's Labor Party, how could somebody who is liberal partner with and support something that is the opposite of everything they believe?
It's delusion. It is useful idiots looking for their own useful idiots. Because what they don't realize is the useful idiots, the reason why they were useful is because they were violent.
Yes,
And-
well,
and
it's the
so-
nature of Marxism. Marxism is the second most violent
Mhm.
ism that humans have created. Islam is historically has been the most violent and deadly, and it still has the high game score with hundreds of millions killed. But if you just look at the last 100 years, socialism, Marxism, communism has been the most deadly of all human political and religious schemes. So they do have that in common. They are both exceedingly deadly, and both will use deception. Both will play by the same Machiavellian concept of the end justifies the means. So they do have things in common, deceit and violence, and the pretense of tolerance until they're in charge, and then there is no tolerance.
That's right. That's right.
And neither value work. Neither value work.
I think progressives see the value in the disruptive component. They're trying to disrupt and take down the West. They haven't been successful at doing it. And by teaming up with Islam, I think they feel that that's their best chance, and then they'll subsequently control those Muslims. But like you said, with the frog and the scorpion, I mean, if this were allowed to play out, Muslims would eat them alive. They'd never
will.
survive it.
That is correct, because when it comes to violence and deception, the Muslims are much better at it than the socialists are.
Yeah.
And so, no, it won't. Well, politics, particularly, and socialism, Marxism, communism, is very corruptive, and it affects a person's soul and mind like a virus, and makes evidence and reason useless to them. And that's the nature of Marxism and socialism. Evidence and reason mean nothing. Religion is even better at being deceptive. Religion is even more empowering of the lie. And so if you pit a religious deception against a political deception, the religious deception will win most of the time. And that's why even in the things that we think were just political deceptions, like, Hitler started off as a Marxist, and then he relabeled himself a fascist only because the uniforms were snappier. But the fact is that Mein Kampf is a religious book, and he worked very hard to present himself as the leader of the new people's religion. Genghis Khan, who we know was so effective and conquered more of the world than even did Rome, his society was controlled by religion, and he was far more verbose about religious edicts with himself as the world leader, and that's what Khan means, that he was leader of the world, an undisputed leader of the world. It was through religion, and it's been the case all the way through time that religion is exceedingly effective when unified with politics. That's what Babel is all about. The intermixing of religion and politics to mislead people. Together, they are exceedingly caustic. You look at Northern Ireland and his country with the mix of Catholicism and socialism. It has really ruined an entire culture. Not even 1% of the people there are capable of being moral or to think. So here's Trump. He's saying that, heck, last year we spent probably 600 billion. Yeah, I think the number is we spent 600 billion a year with NATO, right?
Yeah.
How much we spend with NATO? 6 billion.
Yeah.
6 billion. 6 billion is not even a rounding error on his misgotten war against Iran. And $6
That's
billion,
true.
I'm not sure would pay for the MAGA hats.
Yeah.
The
In light of a
US
$1 trillion budget, I mean, 6 billion. I mean, it's all part of
Yes.
defense, and it's actually well over $1 trillion. There's a black budget in there for our intelligence
course.
agencies disrupting the
Oh, of
entire
course,
planet.
of course.
But to your point, that ratio, 6 billion to 1 trillion, even, come on.
Yeah,
It's
you know,
nothing.
but you go back not very long ago, the defense budget was 300 billion.
Yes.
And that was just a couple of terms ago. And then it got raised so that it was hovering around 500 billion. It was 600 billion when Trump came into office this time. It has doubled in size. The War Department doubled. It was the largest in the world when you combine spine and war actions together. The U.S. spends more on military spine and on war than all other countries in the world combined. And now we've doubled it in the last couple of years. And he's proposing another 50% increase on top of that to go to 1.5 trillion.
Yeah. Well, we're preparing
is-
for
And
war.
what do you have to what do you have to show for it? You have to show a closed Strait of Hormuz and 300 billion to surrender to Iran. That is our return on investment on $1 trillion defense budget. But
as we have noted, this is Satan incarnate. This is Rahab. He was the person the prophets spoke of. He is now presenting himself to those closest to him as the equivalent of Caesar, Alexander the Great, and the great conquerors of old. He is literally presenting himself as a world conqueror. That's how he views himself as the most powerful person in the history of the world. And that is a world conqueror. And so, what is Satan, and what would you expect in the person that Satan is possessing during the last days? He is exactly as one would expect.
And how was the last superpower defeated during the Cold War? Russia. It was spending, wasn't it? I mean, that's what what collapsed the ruble.
Yes and no. What happened was that Reagan decided that America could outspend Russia. America, larger country, and at the time we had a manufacturing base. We don't anymore. And his view was that if we go to a 600 ship navy and we substantially build things like the Star Wars space defense systems, which, by the way, spent the money, never did materialize, nor did his 600 ship navy. Nothing, he said, materialized, but he increased the budget for the Department of Defense and essentially put America on the course of bankruptcy. And so, but his strategy was the Russians can't keep pace with us. So if we hugely increase our spending in all things military, we'll bankrupt the Soviet Union. And so it did bankrupt the Soviet Union, but it also bankrupted the United States. So it was suicidal. It's just that it bankrupted the Soviet Union before it bankrupted the United States. And so it's kind of a tragedy. It was poorly conceived on behalf of Ronald Reagan.
Were you in Russia anytime whenever there was always this joke that my Russian friend would tell me that Kopek, that's the Russian penny, and they just littered the streets because they were completely useless because of the inflation at the time of the ruble. Right. And here we are getting rid of the penny. You know what I mean? It was just one of those things that really hit home for me was Kopek.
I've been in Russia many, many, many times. My most interesting trip into Russia was when I was in my very early 20s. So that was 50 years ago, long before the fall of the Soviet Union. It was during the heyday of the Soviet Union. And I learned a lot about totalitarian regimes and how those nations that claim that they are without religion have turned men into gods. And so there was a chiseled portrait of Engels, Marx, and Lenin, and then Stalin everywhere. I mean, everywhere. The billboards, and then you had the books of their quotes and the songs that the school children would sing to them. They became gods, and they were always represented more deified than the Christians represent their man God Jesus. So that was just really weird. And then it was also weird to see the propaganda they used against the United States to show the United States as horrible, and them as leaders and strong, and all that kind of thing. And it was just a really interesting experience in collectivization, where I came to reject it outright, and to see that there were parts of the Soviet Union that were third world. They were still using wells in the center of the city, and still had donkeys pulling carts. And you go all the way to Siberia, you're going on a train that would take you back into the 19th century in America. You get on an airplane, Aeroflot, and you're riding with chickens. They're pooping on everything, and I mean, it really was a weird experience. And I did the same thing in the People's Republic of China, the first Westerners that were allowed into China after Nixon opened up China so that Americans could go there legally. I was in the first group of 10 people in the country. And we were greeted by the communist leaders of every city. We went to Shanghai. There must have been 4 or 5 million people lining the streets just to watch us, because they'd never seen a Caucasian face. And so it's an interesting experience. Then all these countries I've gone back to many, many times. And I opened the first enterprise zone in China years ago, and I've gone back to Russia after it threw off the yoke of communism. And Russia's a beautiful country. To see St. Petersburg again, now free of the communist yoke, beautiful place. And the Russian people have always been Chinese people, and the Russian people have always enjoyed their company. I think they're really good people. And anyway, and I'm sure that's not here nor there, but I can tell you that Trump has his numbers off by a multiple of 100. That's not good if you're president.
A couple too many zeros.
All he has to do is say it, and it's right in his mind, right? That's the nature of confabulation.
He repeated it.
Yep. He'll never bother to correct it.
Yes.
The number.
Yeah, yesterday was a very strange day on what happened. We know that Trump violated the memorandum of understanding that he signed a second time. That the memorandum of understanding says that there cannot be any force or threat of force. And Trump threatened to kill all of the Iranian negotiators and eliminate Iran, so there'd be no home to get back to, and they would not be able to even make it back themselves. So he said he was going to kill the Iranian negotiators and destroy Iran, which would be that's a threat of force, isn't it? I'm just checking.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm going to completely destroy your country. So there's no country to go back to, and I'm going to kill you en route to it. I would think that would be a threat of so Trump said that, and so the entire Iranian delegation walked out. So what's the point? And they, as they were walking out, they were intercepted by the Qataris. Now, who knows how the Qataris weaseled their way into this, because the Qataris are not unbiased here. They are an enemy right now of Iran. The only function the Qataris play is that Trump uses Qatar as his bank for the oil that he's stealing from Venezuela. He banks it in a private account in Qatar. Qatar pays Trump billions of dollars, and also the stolen assets from Iran are kept in Qatari banks. So they're a banker in this process, but they are an enemy of Iran. And And so what are they doing there? And certainly Pakistan is not a neutral player either. They have formed very expensive, very elaborate defense treaties with Saudi Arabia to defend Saudi Arabia against Iran.
Yeah.
And so they walk out and these two intermediaries intercept them. What did they have to offer Iran to get Iran to return to that room? We're not told, but what is it that they would have to offer? Pakistan would, of course, have nothing other than you return to the room and we won't nuke you. I mean, they have no money and they really have no prestige. They do have a border with Iran that Iran uses to ship oil and other things out of the Strait of Hormuz. But no, that's about it. And they have maybe some pipelines and some railways and other things that they can bring product in around the U.S. Blockade. Qatar's got money, but I mean, the only thing I can possibly imagine is, okay, so Trump's an asshole. We know he's demonic. We can't change that. But you have a memorandum of understanding that is a huge win. If you pencil out all they got, it's about $500 billion. The tolls on the Strait of Hormuz, the complete release of all sanctions, the 25 plus, it could be upwards of $100 billion in confiscated assets, and the minimum of $300 billion of funds to rebuild Iran. You put all that together, and then they get the win of they checkmated Israel, made Israel completely vulnerable so that Israel can be destroyed in the future quite easily and in the near future. And they pushed the United States out of the region. So it's a heck of a deal. In fact, it's too good a deal for Iran to be implemented because you can't have that. It's like the Treaty of Versailles. It failed because it was too one-sided. The memorandum of understanding is actually too vicious a surrender document on behalf of the United States. So it can't be implemented as it was written. But I mean, that's the only thing I can say is that, you have a complete win here. Go along, just, pretend to dance between the raindrops and ignore this. And we own Israel. We own the United States. And you're filthy rich.
I mean, look at how Iran has elevated itself on the world stage. I mean, and this is all due to Trump. He elevated them. All his actions they look more mature than us. They're outthinking us. They're out negotiating us. And they seem, when you see them talk, they seem like the reasonable ones in the room. And really, compared to somebody who's demonic and possessed, they really are. But isn't that, if you think back to Iran and how they presented themselves and how they were marginalized in the world, I mean, they're right up there, a player right now up there with China and Russia and the U.S. And, sometimes I'm more inclined to believe what comes out of Tehran than what comes out of the White House, out of their spokespeople.
Not more prone to believe. For the last 3 months, every time there's been an announcement in the media about this is what's been agreed to with Iran, the first thing I do is search for what statements has Iran released. Correct. And what I have found is I'm not aware of a single statement that Iran has released that has proven to be untrue, even in its detail. And I have not found a statement that the U.S. has released that has been proven true. So, it's hard to admit that an Islamic regime is outmaneuvering, outthinking, even more ethical and moral than the United States, or Israel. It's true that Iran has come out looking brilliant, looking sympathetic, because they have been so disciplined in their outward communication, and they have not been the aggressor even in one day. Every move is calculated to be responsive, and they constantly say, we will not provoke anything. If you do this, we will do that. This will be our response, but it's always a response. And a response is, I know people aren't very thoughtful today, and they can't, cause and effect is way beyond them. But if you're a moral person, you have to know that a response is very different than provocation. This is something my ex, I had a problem all the time. She said, you're saying the mean things to me. I said, well, because you told me something that is really nasty, and then I asked you to stop, and you doubled down on it, and I asked you again. I said, this is not true. You're completely unfounded in this. You need to stop. And then to do it again, and you're going to get an earful at that point. And if you want to take their response out of context of the provocation, then you're just being an idiot. And that's what is happening here, that Iran, the provocation is coming from the United States, and Iran is giving a thoughtful response and a constrained response to American and Israeli provocation. And then there's this myth that Iran is in charge of Hamas. I mean, who in the world promoted that lie? Hamas is funded by and controlled out of Qatar, not Iran.
Yeah. I don't understand any of this that's on the screen. Breaking news, Iran says no plan to allow that was never in the memorandum of an understanding about inspectors. They were talking about the nuclear dust, and that was the only thing up for negotiation.
J.D. Vance announced that Iran had agreed to allow international atomic energy inspectors back into their country. And he calls this the great win. And so Iran came back and issued a very careful denial because Iran is going to go along with minimal concessions for, because it's a $500 billion to $750 billion that is on the table. So for that amount of money, they're going to make some compromises here and there to get this deal done. And so what it appears that Iran agreed to is that under the prior to Trump attacking Iran a little over a year ago, Iran was still allowing inspectors from the Atomic Energy Agency. But their inspectors were, since they were no longer under the Joint Protocols Agreement, they were under Iranian supervision, and Iran would only take them to 2 sites, and they had to give, 10 days advance notice, and Iran would only take them to 2 sites with long notice, and they were always accompanied when they were there. And Iran came to know that the people who were doing the inspections were actually working for the Mossad and the CIA.
Sure.
Then Trump bombed Iran, and that was over. And so Iran knows that it's never going to allow open inspection again. But Iran would allow, for $500 billion, the Atomic Energy Agency to come in with inspectors under its rules, so that of the 40 sites they may want to inspect, it limits to 20 or to 2 of them, and only with 20 days notice they can and supervised they can go to 2 of them, and that's the kind of compromise that you would expect. So what this says is very cleverly worded. Iran says no plan to allow IAEA inspectors at bombed nuclear sites. So if the site was bombed by Israel or America, they're not going to allow them in, and that would be highly justifiable. So they'll pick a couple of sites that were not bombed, and with proper notice, they'll allow them in there just to pursue the closure of the deal. So very clever on their part, but that's what this
what do you think? What do you think a ton highly fissionable 80% uranium is worth to any country? I mean, what would that be worth to buy that? I mean, not near $1 trillion, right?
Essentially 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, Iran in one facility, and they have 40 of them, had 450 kilograms, well over 1,000 pounds, of uranium enriched to 60% 235 fissile purity. That is 90% of the way to a nuclear grade uranium, which is at 87.5%, because 90% or 80% of the work is getting it to 20, and then another 15% of it, the work is getting it to 60. Once you have it to 60, it's exceedingly fast. It's in a standard centrifuge array. It's which is one that a room that's 10 feet by 10 feet. Driven by a little tiny generator motor, will take enough to build 10 bombs from 60 to 87%. So it's nothing, and Iran has some 40 of those sites buried. Sometime in the early spring of 25, Iran was known to have 450 kilograms, over 1,000 pounds, of uranium-235 to 60% fissile purity. They have continued to run the centrifuges since that time. They've continued to mine uranium since that time. The likelihood is that they now have enough at 87% fissile purity that they have now already transferred back into the metallic stage from the gaseous stage, and that they have already turned into bomb grade uranium. They want to be on the thrust of being a nuclear nation without actually being there. That's the way to do it. And that is likely what they have. And that they have probably manufactured another 450 kilograms of uranium 235 to 60% fissile purity. And so that they can offer that to the United States and still have everything they want, because even beyond that, they can make whatever they want with the 40 buried facilities and no inspection in those facilities. They can make whatever else they need, and they don't need any more than they already have. So they're in a position they can be somewhat negotiable on the uranium-235 at 60% fissile purity, up to 450 kilograms, without having any effect on their nuclear bomb capability. And we don't know if that's if they already have one. My understanding was that since it was a week's time and they've had a year and a half under bombardment by the United States, you'd have to assume that Iran is brilliant on all things except what to do with the uranium, which has been their single biggest investment. And the likelihood of that is zero. And you can't pretend that Iran had a civilian nuclear program. They don't. I mean, the one facility they have that is a nuclear power plant is run by the Russians. The source for the fuel for that comes in by the Russians. All management is by the Russians, and so that's irrelevant to the whole process. It wasn't even bombed during the war. It's irrelevant to the process. All of the uranium mining and enrichment is for a singular purpose, and that is to make Iran a threshold nuclear nation. And so there is with Israel and the U.S. bombing them twice, there is a zero possibility that Iran didn't already crush that threshold and has the enough for the score of bombs at 87.5 to 90% fissile purity. It'd be unfathomable for this country that we have watched such articulate people speak on behalf of, and all their maneuvering, for them not to be in that position. So really, all we're talking about is periphery kind of things that are easy to for Iran to do whatever they want to thereafter. And that memorandum of understanding was very clear that Iran said they would not build a bomb because they probably already have them, and they wouldn't acquire a bomb because they've already acquired them, and they would discuss the issue of their highly enriched uranium, but they would retain all rights to continue to enrich uranium. So the United States got nothing here. I mean, if you fight a war for a promise to maintain what was the promise prior to the war, you got nothing. That's a nothing
Yeah.
burger.
That's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, I'm not the best deal maker in the world, but if I'm Trump, I can easily offer them $600 billion and we just say, we'll buy your half a ton of uranium, knowing that nothing changes whatsoever. I get to call it a win, and you get the money, you get the Strait of Hormuz, and we all go back to. And yet they can't come to that conclusion.
It's
going to have to make that kind of deal.
£1,000, not a ton. The United States wouldn't have any use for 60% or above fissile purity. The only uranium that you can use in our warships and in our nuclear power plants is between 3 and 5%, and so it really doesn't have a lot of certainly doesn't have the value when you're talking about $300 to $600 billion. So no, there is no deal there, and the Iranians are not going to, under any circumstance, give enriched uranium to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but why wouldn't they, Yada? I mean, it's easily reproduced with all the centrifuges. They mine their own uranium. Why not give them a token amount of it and say, and then this way Trump has his propaganda and they buy time?
Between the Persian pride and Islamic ego, no, not a chance in the world.
Yeah, okay.
Not.
Yeah. And didn't you say too, Yada, that they have, is it called tritium? Is that what they use to amplify I guess the explosive
tritium is the heavy water that we're talking about in the World War II when they're going after the German heavy water factories. It's tritium. Iran had a surface tritium reactor, and so the U.S. destroyed that tritium reactor. We don't know if Iran had already refined sufficient tritium for its use prior to the U.S. Destroying it. We don't even know if Iran, knowing that the U.S. was coming, moved everything in that tritium refinery reactor subterranean and built more of them and left that one as a, they drove helicopters on the tarmac with paint, come bomb me. So we don't know that's the case. Tritium is not necessary for an atomic bomb. What tritium does is it increases the yield of a bomb. So you can use less uranium per bomb and have a higher yield on that bomb with less uranium. The tritium also makes the bomb more reliable because it's an accelerant for the chain reaction. And for a standard nuclear bomb, all you're doing is you're taking the highly fissionable uranium-235, you're putting it in the center in a metallic form, and then you're surrounding it by explosives that you have positioned with an outer shell such that the explosion sends all of the energy inside, and that the heat and the pressure of that starts the chain reaction, and it's more effective with a tritium. So they call them tritium triggers. So we know that Iran had a tritium reactor. We don't know how many they had. We don't know if they replaced the one that they had that was above ground. We don't know if they'd already made enough tritium. But what the tritium does is that everybody's talked about Iran having enough nuclear material at 450 kilograms to make 20 bombs. But what they don't say is that Iran would be a lot better off with lower yield bombs because Israel's so small that a large yield bomb would be counterproductive for them. And U.S. bases are too close to Iran, that the more tactical, the smaller yield, the more Hiroshima-ish they make the bomb, the better it is for Iran. And so they can probably double that number. And then you could quadruple that number if you have tritium. So 20 becomes 40 at more yield and becomes 80 or more with the tritium. So that's the process. And I spent a lot of time tracking everything Iran was doing pursuant to its bomb, because all the idiots now that are super anti-Semites that are pretending to be smart were all saying that Iran was not developing a nuclear bomb. And I kept on saying, there is no purpose for uranium to be enriched at 20%, much less above that number, up to 60%. No purpose in developing tritium reactors, no purpose of any of these experiments that they're doing. It has no purpose other than a bomb. And you don't completely sacrifice your economy and your nation's standing in the world to generate electricity, because a nuclear plant, all it does is boil water, and you never need more than 3% physical purity to boil the water. If you're floating on oil and gas, you would never do that. So there was no chance. It was for civilian purposes, and all those talking heads now that just become raging anti-Semites, they were just dead ass wrong. And so I spent a lot of time. I wrote a number of articles on it, and we're in the same position. They wanted to be threshold nuclear so that they could develop a bomb if necessary to defend themselves.
Yeah.
But their bomb is strictly designed to be defensive. Trump saying, I saved Israel from being nuked. No, Iran didn't have a nuclear bomb. Otherwise, America would have been nuked, and a lot of other places would have been nuked. So they obviously did not have one. So you did not save Iran from having one. So you could not have saved Israel from being nuked, sir. That logic there's no logic there. And then if you think that, well, I've kept them from having a bomb, that's not true. You pushed them to the threshold of having one.
Yeah, their first target, like you said, is going to be that fleet setting off their coast. That is absolutely
if it stays there. Yeah, if it stays there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Trump has to bring them home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Trump can complain all he wants to that I'm going to bomb them again and drop bombs in the middle of their heads and all that sort of thing, but it really can't. I mean, it's America has outlived its time there, and there is nothing. Continuing to do the same thing and expecting a different result is insane. He's already had the Congress vote against him continuing the war. He's already surrendered. Now what? How do you fight a war that you've already surrendered?
Yeah.
Yeah, here's Cruz. Giving billions of dollars to lunatics in Iran is not a good idea. Thank you there, Senator Cruz. That's brilliant of you. But guess what? When you lose a war, you don't get to write the terms of surrender. So, welcome to Versailles.
He's gone from Lion Ted to Captain Obvious.
Mm-hmm. Lion Ted to Captain Obvious. Oh, so it's all a lie. This is that's a scene. They want to do a scene of Jerusalem with the who knows what the three that are lofted up there, but with the three people being crucified someplace, and then earthquakes, and they want to have a solar eclipse on Passover. And why wouldn't somebody, and just somebody, say, okay, what day of the lunar month is Passover? 14th day, 13th, 14th day, depending on the time. 13th, 14th day of a lunar month. Is the moon full, or is it new on the 14th day of a month?
Full moon.
Always, without exception, right?
Always. Cannot be anything else.
We're dealing with the lunar cycle, 29 and a half days, 14th evening of a new month. Passover, it's going to always be a full moon. Guess what can never happen if the moon is full? If the moon is full, that means that the sun is here. Well, we get this screen here, but I don't think I have enough room with this little camera. But the sun is shining on the moon. All right, the sun's light is shining fully on the surface of the moon when the moon is full. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And on an eclipse of the sun, the moon is between the sun and the earth. Mm-hmm. So it's always on a new moon, never on a full moon. So what they're describing not only wasn't witnessed anywhere else in the world, because that would have been the ultimate peculiarity. We've got a solar eclipse now on a full moon. It's the opposite of what can happen.
Mhm.
And but they repeat the lie.
Yep.
They repeat the lie that the veil and the temple was ripped. What would they give two rats' asses of what happens in the temple, since they're anti-temple?
Mhm.
Why would they pretend that this was somehow tied with Passover when they never mentioned Passover, and they want to believe in Easter? If it was Passover, then what in the hell is do you have a New Testament for? If it was Passover, is Passover. I mean, that was the doorway to life, and you're now back in the Torah. You can't have a New Testament. It's just staggering how utterly ignorant and irrational the religious are, and they will promote all of this absolute nonsense. And
Oh,
by
it was
the
it.
way, there's no, right there in the middle of the Sunday. Then what they want to do, first of all, there were no crosses ever like this,
Mhm.
ever. Why would you have a cross like the Christian cross? Wood was exceedingly valuable and rare. You're the only way you're going to hold it up is to put the upright in an etched limestone receptacle for it. It never moves, and the top piece sits on top. It's like the capital T, not a lowercase t. So the
Mhm.
symbol of your religion. You've screwed up the symbol entirely of what would have happened, and there was no Jesus on it, because he never existed.
Oh, this
And it was-
idea that the entire city of Jerusalem, because it was the most Shabbat of Shabbats during this thing that happened, would have absolutely cowered in fear inside their homes because of what was happening, and absolute. That's what this video says. They absolutely did no work whatsoever for an entire day, so that they didn't mess up, and make God angry on what was happening on this day. There is absolutely no way that any of that
Yeah.
took place.
and what they want to do is blend the Torah with their myth, but
Mhm.
the Torah destroys the credibility of their myth.
Oh my God, that's an hour long. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
What Holy Saturday was like, and what they goddamn pieces of crap that promote Christianity. There is no Holy Saturday, and in your religion, your God, who was nothing but a man, and a man so feeble that men could kill him, he took a nap.
Mhm.
In reality, it's matzah. If you don't know what matzah is, then you ought not be talking about Passover, because Passover without matzah is a trip to Sheol, a trip to hell,
Mm.
because you become eternal, but still wrapped in and slathered with your guilt. And so matzah is more essential than Passover, and Passover without matzah, Holy Saturday here, you're screwed. I mean, this is a religion that is the antithesis of what God said is saying, is to, and by the way, it's the same thing in Judaism. They don't celebrate matzah either. They turn
Mhm.
Passover into a 7-day observance, when God said, no, it's matzah that's 7 days. Passover is just the first day of matzah, and matzah is the day of days, not Passover. And so they've got no clue what happened on matzah, what the point of matzah. They have no clue what Bikurim is. They have no clue that it was the Bakor who fulfilled Bikurim, which means appropriately named, I guess, wasn't it? And that the firstborn Bakor was Dode. I mean, it's all laid out. It's all so clear. And they made a religion out of ignoring all of it and then twisting it later to serve their own agenda.
Mm.
Oh, by the way, there was no Joseph and Mary.
Dude, I
No
didn't realize
Jesus,
that
no
thing was an
Joseph, no
hour
Mary.
long. Oh,
Yeah.
an hour long of absolute nonsense. That has
Yeah,
got to
God,
be.
I couldn't do 3
And
minutes.
if you're a Christian, you have been played for a fool.
Mhm.
And go read Twistianity. You won't get through the first chapter before you vomit all over the religion that has led you astray. And by the time you're at the end, you'll be so damn angry that these buffoons have lied to you that you'll be spitting nails.
Yeah.
So close and so far. This is actually interesting. This is a psychologist, probably a psychiatrist, because he's a professor, I think, too. So he has a PhD. He is saying that Trump is so full spectrum insane that he said to be the easiest person to ever diagnose. You never even have to meet him. He exceeds every qualification for the insanity labels by such a magnitude that there is just no question about it. If you can play a little bit of it.
Donald Trump, I know when people say, oh, how can you diagnose from a distance? How do you know he really has mental illness? To me, that's like asking an economist, how can you know that Elon Musk is rich if you haven't actually audited his taxes? Because at this point, the symptoms are so extreme that they're really actually, I would honestly say that in 40 years of clinical practice and almost 30 years of teaching psychiatric residents, I've never encountered a patient as sick as Donald Trump.
Wow.
But he's so many standard deviations away from what we would normally consider normal. And that where it's coming to a head now is in his fantasies of being this military conqueror. He's been comparing himself to Napoleon, Alexander the Great, to Caesar. Right? Well, what do all these men have in common? Aside from being great men of history, they're all military world conquerors. And what I believe is he is setting us up. He is grooming us for nuclear war. He wants to be the person who pushes the button first. Donald Trump, I know when people say, oh, how?
Oof.
He's quite right. I mean, this is, remember, Trump is possessed. So he's trying to use psychology to diagnose somebody who's demon possessed. And it is extreme. It's at the extreme end of the spectrum of psychosis.
Yeah, I think it's important to make this distinction. Yes, Donald Trump is not just demon possessed. He's possessed by Satan, the worst of all demons. And he's the one that the prophets warned us so much about at this time. That does not, however, change the fact that Donald Trump has been a narcissist and psychopath and a sexual pervert for all of his life, and has always been office rocker is a term that I would use, but he suffers from the most diabolical mental illnesses. I mean, to be a rapist and a pedophile and incestuous, which he is, those three things, and to be a megalomaniac and to have no empathy and to be a psychopath, those are all very serious mental illnesses.
Yeah.
And so we've always known that Trump suffers from those kinds of mental illnesses. And it is worse, of course. He is suffering now from dementia. He has all manner of inabilities to even have even a quasi-realistic view of who he is and reality. He has literally lost touch with reality, which is, I guess, the most extreme form of mental illness. And if you listen to him talk, there's a Jon Stewart clip that comes later in this where he is trying to understand the capitulation on all of Trump's positions. No missiles, well, they're entitled to have missiles. No money, well, they're entitled to have money. And when you listen to Trump, he's having a very difficult time even speaking, even communicating in the English language in a complete sentence. So he is mentally ill. He is also demon possessed. So he is mentally ill and demon possessed, not just demon possessed, not just mentally ill. He has half of it right, and he is absolutely correct that this mental illness of Donald Trump, his megalomania, his overt, covert, and malignant narcissism, and the fact that he's a psychopath, he is acting on it and been positioned in a position of power where he is the cause of World War III. Billions of people are going to die because of this man. So it's not just your political preference. I see so many posts, I'll die on this hill for defending Trump because they don't like Democrats. I don't like Democrats either. But the fact is that they're promoting a man who is going to cause the death and destruction of the planet. And if it were not for the final act that that God has orchestrated to stop him, stop Satan, all life on this planet would be extinguished. That is how evil Donald Trump is. And this professor, to his credit, knows 3/4 of it. He knows that Trump wants to destroy the world. He literally wants to destroy the world. And he knows that Donald Trump is off the chart mentally ill.
I don't think that, because he says that he is grooming the public or the world for him being the one that I don't think that Trump plans that far ahead. I don't think that there is.
Yeah. This is okay. You are right in the sense that Trump doesn't really plan. He doesn't have a coherent strategy on most things. He doesn't have a coherent strategy on the economy, on immigration, on his use of ICE, of the war in Iran, his relationship with Israel, what he wants to do with Ukraine and Putin. He does not have a coherent strategy on anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he rules through chaos. Every day has to be something that he posts, something that he says, something that he does that detracts attention away from the things that he said, did, and wrote the previous day. And so he rules by distraction and chaos, and he doesn't read, and he doesn't strategize. All that's true. He made a deal with Satan. Quite frankly, he made a deal with Satan. He was down and out, and he was headed to jail, and he was going to be bankrupt. He made a deal with Satan, and Satan possessed him. And so they are a team, and he knows he's a team with Satan. Now, it is true that his mental illness has hugely affected his ability to think rationally, to understand the world as it is and his position in it. All those things are true. It's just like he is mentally ill and he's demon possessed. They're both true. Trump rules by chaos and is just going to say something that's stupid that he'll change his mind on the next day, and so that people are chasing their tails and nobody can actually pin him down. That's also true. But in terms of his ultimate goal, and he's on a revenge tour. He thinks that the world treated him poorly and wrongly. He's on a revenge tour. He wants to destroy the world. He does think that through. That's what he wants to do. His goal is not to make America great. It's not to partner with any country in the world. It's to demean them and justify their destruction.
So you're saying, yeah, he's conscious of that. He's never going to articulate that, but he's conscious of that.
Yes. It has befallen me for reasons that we can debate Yahweh about here in a year's time, as to why he thought that this would be a good idea. But he has given me the responsibility of figuring out who Satan is, how he's used, and how he will continue to be deployed, and then to bring him down. I don't know why God chose me to do that, but I do know that's the reason why we began with what was Prophet of Doom and the exposure of who Allah actually is, which is Satan, and then the analysis of who Muhammad is, and then how Muhammad and Paul are very similar, and the religions are very similar, and how Judaism created both of them. God was insistent that I know who Satan is. And that's where we began. And then I saw Satan through all three of those religions. And I came to know Satan, I think, better than anyone in human history. Particularly the conundrum that the religious can't make their way through is that how could their God be Satan when their God demeans Satan? And I'm the first to ever explain that. And so I know that the final blow is I know when Satan is arriving in Jerusalem. I know when he's going to declare himself a god, and I know that that he is knew that he was going to betray Israel, which is what he has now done. I knew when he was going to do it. All of those things. It's been, and his ultimate murder of me, the savagery of that murder, is what finally does him in. You might say, well, it's it's a pretty lame way to do your adversary in, to let him kill you in the end. Oh no, it's actually brilliant. And that's Yahweh's plan, and I'm not taking credit for the brilliance of it, but that's the plan. And when you have devoted that much time, the Babel series, the Twistianity series, the Goddamn Religion series, 13 books, they average about 750 pages apiece, the most comprehensive analysis of Satan ever written. That's the equivalent of 13 PhD dissertations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know him pretty well. I know what he's going to do. And that's what he wants. He wants to destroy the world. He thinks, when you read Satan's presentation of himself in the garden in the book of Ezekiel, and if you actually understand everything that's being said there, of how beautiful he thought he was and how raw a deal he thought he was given, then you know the motivation. Then you read Isaiah 14, that he wants to be above Elyon, the Most High. He's on a revenge tour. He's mad at God for the programming that he's under. He's mad at humanity. He's disgusted by humanity. He thinks humanity is so far beneath him and so easy to manipulate. So yes, Trump is grooming humans to be destroyed by him. If you read Twistianity, Satan admits that he demon-possessed Paul, who's the creator of the religion. In Islam, Muhammad admits twice that he's demon-possessed. There are whole surahs in the Quran devoted to Satan and the demons loving the Quran in Islam. Allah spends all of his time in hell. Satan is so disgusted by Yahweh's affinity for humans, as horrible as we humans have been, and as brilliant as he is by comparison, that he has a deep-seated hatred for us. And particularly those that he fools. They disgust him all the more. Here in Islam, it's Allah, Satan, and in Christianity, it's obvious that the founder of the religion was demon-possessed. And so what Satan is saying to God, I'm flipping you the bird, pal. These are the people that you seem to have interest in, and look how easy they are to fool with those religions. Look what we heard from the Jew saying, that I'm honoring God and showing great reverence by erasing his name from my own and from his testimony. He says, they're just scum. And so he is grooming us for our own destruction so that he can justify his mass murder of humanity. Saying you had it coming. I'm doing you a favor of just ending your lives. So yes, he knows what he's doing. That's where he's going. That's where all of this is going. That's why it's the Department of War. I bet that's not the answer you were looking for, Will.
No.
Long way around. I got
yeah.
you. That it's not necessarily Trump having a plan. It is the writer, the one that rides with him, Satan. That is
Wrong. Trump ran for president on the revenge tour. He wanted to attack everyone that he thought treated him poorly, and he thinks the whole world has treated him poorly. He thinks that when America voted for another president, that was destroy America. Trump wants to destroy the world on his revenge tour every bit as much as Satan does. Yeah. They're the same.
Yeah.
So no, it's not that he is
indistinguishable at this point.
Yeah, they're it's like Muhammad and Satan, like Paul and Satan. Satan didn't take advantage of Paul. Satan didn't take advantage of Muhammad. They're inseparable. They're colleagues.
Mm. Sobering.
Speaking of Satan, the Black Plague. You can play this one too.
Found.
Maybe not. Yeah. Look at how the police go after them.
Yeah. I noticed.
Beating them like the animals they are.
Wow. No riot gear. No idea of showing up in force and saying, "Hey, please leave, please leave." I mean, we pop smoke and go kick ass. Wow.
Yeah.
And they have it coming.
Oh, yeah, absolutely they do. Yes,
They have it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You said in your commentary, Yada, that Israel is failing from the outside in and the inside out. And geez,
that's correct.
I mean, we've been talking for a long time what's going from the outside in, but the inside out is just going to tear them apart. It really
And
is.
that the Haredi, they have three political parties of substance, and then they're bolstered by the religious Zionist parties, of which there's three of those. And collectively, they are the Netanyahu coalition. Likud still gets by far the most votes, but Likud has less than half, or down where almost a third of the number of seats necessary for a prime minister. You have to have 60 seats to elect a prime minister. And Likud sits at anywhere from, depending on the time of the poll, anywhere from 18 to 24 seats. All the rest of it are these religious parties, either religious Zionism, like Ben Gur's party, Smotrich's party, or they're the Haredi, United Torah Judaism, the Shahs, the like. So they are this government. They are this government. And so, here you have Netanyahu committing Israel to all manner of wars and destroying Israel's relationship with every country in the world. And his coalition is based on people who pay no tax, who do not work, who contribute nothing to society, and won't enlist in the IDF along with every other
fight in these
Israeli.
wars that they're voting for people who are perpetuating.
Correct.
Not even
It's
that.
really stunning.
Have to go out and protest it. And so not only are there, I mean, I'm not being productive. I'm getting this money. I don't have to fight in the IDF. Why don't I just stay at home and enjoy my free ride as opposed to get out and interfere
They're entitled.
and make other people,
What's so weird about this, and this is why it is really a strange situation in Israel. Ben Gur has been given control because his number of seats are necessary for to hold the coalition of Netanyahu's government together. Ben Gur was given, and he's a madman, and he was given control over the police in Israel. So it means if these are legitimate police, he has control over them. He is a religious wacko. He is a devotee of one of the most racially charged Jews in the history of the country. So he is a religious wacko, and he is the charge of the police. So are these? He would never attack the Haredi. He's not Haredi himself, but doing that, and it's not in his nature. So who are these people that are doing that? And then you're dealing with the Marxists, but the Marxists are not going to show up in black wearing police across their chest with billy clubs and go after anybody. So, who's tearing who apart? In Tel Aviv, they're going to be protesting against this and promoting all manner of sexual preferences. And then in Jerusalem, in the area around Jerusalem, they're going to be, the Haredi is going to be trying to disturb society to perpetuate them being parasites. It's just a really weird country. And oh, by the way, guess what they don't have? A constitution.
Constitution. Mm-hmm.
They have none. Wow, has he ever become an anti-Semite? His guest here, it just wants to say, every president of the United States that has been around during the Netanyahu era has hated the man's guts, that Netanyahu is the cause of all evil. Listen, I'm clearly not a Netanyahu fan. I clearly think that Israel was put in a suicidal position because of Netanyahu. He has led the country astray. But these people want to blame everything on Israel and Netanyahu. And the vitriol against Jews is just so prolific. And this guy, I don't know what he's got going for him. He's he can't even wear his glasses. He's got this stupid hat, and he's got a speech impediment. And he's got an exceedingly dark heart. And, he had a guest that came on and trashed Israel, and he said, yeah, I support everything you said.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's blaming the IDF for using white phosphorus and cluster munitions when it's cluster munitions that are used against them. The Israelis really would have no reason to use white phosphorus. And if they were using white phosphorus, there'd be so much evidence for it that you wouldn't be speculating. And I look at what's happening. There are no, we used white phosphorus in burning down Japanese cities and German cities in World War II, roasting women and children alive. But you look at the fire in those cities that raged through the cities, it's a very different situation than the kaboom that you see with Israeli targeting munitions. I've seen a lot of pictures recently of Lebanon, and it's beginning to look a lot like Gaza. And that's a real tragedy for Israel. But they're not white phosphorus. So, and the cluster munitions are not an Israeli tactic. That's an American tactic, by the way. And also now Iran is using cluster munitions. But the Israelis are not. It's just we're going to slander Israel. I watched about 20 minutes of this, and parts of it were interesting. Of course, you've got a Lord this and a Lord that, not Yahweh. The things that come across when you study Jacob's story is that Jacob was a scoundrel. He was treacherous. He was part of the plot to deliberately mislead his father and steal the birthright from Esau. It's a horrible act. It's reprehensible that you do that to your father. You do it in concert with your mother, and you do it against your brother. And he lived in absolute fear of his brother after that. In fact, if it wasn't for Leah, there would have been no conversation with his brother. He sent Leah out to talk to Esau to say, is Esau really going to kill him? He was a scoundrel, he was treacherous, couldn't be trusted. And then he runs to Haran because he's afraid of Esau. And there he goes, I guess it's probably an uncle, but everybody in that initial group was related to one another. They're all part of Abraham's clan from Babylon. And he decides that he likes the younger daughter of Uncle Laban, and that is Rachel, and he doesn't much like Leah. And they want to paint Leah as having either be blind, an eye infection, she was deformed, she was worth nothing to be a concubine, is what they said here. And there's no indication that Leah was any of those things. The depiction and the name Leah, I've done a fairly significant investigation, and it doesn't mean any of the things that they ascribe to her. But human anatomy is as human anatomy is. I think Jacob was a scum. I'm just really sorry for Yahweh that he has Abraham, Yishak, and Jacob as the fellows that he established the covenant with, because there wasn't a decent human being among the three of them. And their sons were no better. That's just the reality of it. God's not going to tell you the story about these boys being so pathetic if it wasn't true. All during their marriage, Jacob was abusive of Leah. He treated her like shit. And he was a wimp himself. When a wimp treats a woman like crap, that's a deep-seated psychiatric problem. And that's what happened. He was a wimp himself, a treacherous little spineless wimp himself. And he abused his wife. And when you listen, and that was the part of this that I actually thought was pretty good, you listen to the names of Leah's children, the statements that she makes about the birth of these children, which you quickly find out is that that she was disgusted by him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that she actually calls him in the birth of Reuben. Before it, she says, I've been abused, and this is maybe a triumph in the middle of that abuse. And then she, Loie is named. Maybe this will bring us together. It's just really tragic. And so she has a diary in the names. But in the end, she recognizes that she is Ashar. That ultimately, that not because of her husband, who was a scum, not because of her sister, who was also trashy, but because of her internal qualities, she overcame, and she is now announcing to the world that she is Ashar. She is a blessing and benefit to all women because of what she's done. Now, of course, in this piece of crap deal here, they say that she is the mother of Jesus Christ. Oh, it's just so pathetic. No, but her line would produce Dod. But it's interesting; they would have to go outside of Yahud to produce Dod because of Ruth. She was a Moabite. Well, I'm continuing to translate the opening dialogue between Ruth and Boaz, and it is a really, really interesting thing that the first opening dialogue and what she does and what he says. God, it's the worst. I'm just telling you, I've just never come across anything that even resembles this in the Torah, Prophets, and Psalms after 25 years of translating. There is nothing that is anywhere like this. It's like he's having a conversation with her, and it's like, okay, did I or didn't I tell my men not to touch you? He begins it at a question, then he negates naga, which is to touch. Oh, he says, you ought to question whether I asked my men not to touch you. And then he said, the first comment, he starts with a ha, which means this is a question. And then he negates shama, written, spoken in the second person, feminine singular. So this is you, not listen. So question, I'm asking a question, and then it's you not listen. How in the world are you going to translate that?
Right.
It's like, whether or not you listen, then he gives her advice. Whether or not you listen, this is my advice. You stay here in my field. You stay close to my women.
Mhm.
And you need to wonder whether or not I told my men not to touch you. That's why I'm saying you need to stay right here. It's just really unusual, the kind of dialogue. And so, and one of the things
Almost
that's really
having to
Mhm,
almost
go ahead.
having to really figure out who the audience is that this is being
Mhm,
spoken to. Is when Boaz
mhm.
is speaking, is he speaking to Leah or to Ruth for Ruth at that time, or is he speaking to a different audience at a different time? You know, the layers of
Yes,
that. That
yes. So we're dealing with that all the way through the Torah.
Mhm.
We have dialogue and we have action that is historically accurate, but the testimony that we have has no validity as to that time and those people. It only exists to educate us now to understand God's story. So it was written for us to understand it now. Uh, but we still have to render the dialogue as it was written with the understanding we are now looking through a lens to understand what was he saying to her? Why was he, why were the first two things that he had to tell her positioned as questions?
Mhm.
Why were the verbs negated? And this is one of those things where you translate it the best you can, and then you stew on it some, and then you go back to it and say, now I get it. And typically the light will go on as you move through it, but that's where I am at this point. It is also interesting that he comes out of Bethlehem, the town of Bethlehem. He comes to his field, and she is specifically said, and one of the things that's really interesting after she is. Ruth is introduced to who Boaz is, and Naomi gives the most profoundly impactful introduction of Boaz that is given of any man anywhere in the Torah, prophets, and Psalms, way beyond anything it's said of Dode, way beyond anything it's said of Moshe, of course, way beyond anything it's said of Abraham. There is no more dramatic, bold introduction of a person than Naomi's introduction of Boaz. And the next response is Ruth steps up and says, well, then I'm going there. I'm going to go and start reaping in his field. And so, that's pretty bold. And then we have Boaz coming from Bethlehem to his field, and the first thing he asks, he has a na'ar, and na'ar is dominant in this part of the conversation. Na'ar is the term that was used to describe those in attendance when Yahweh and the two men arrived to tell Abraham and Sarah that they were going to have a child, and then they go into Sodom after that. But it's also they're used to describe Na'ar is used to describe Noach and Shem, a father and son, accompanying Abraham and Yishak to Mount Moriah. And so then you have Na'ar used throughout this. And then there's the Na'ara, the feminine version of it. And it's singular and plural. And it's used like 12 times in this dialogue.
Ooh.
And obviously bringing the stories together. This is a common denominator that you're supposed to find to bring the stories together and to explain what that term means. And it's sort of a rascally individual who comes across younger than their age, but has a tendency to roar, speaks loudly, speaks a lot, shakes things up wherever they go. So it's really an interesting term, and it can be applied to women and to men, and it's used throughout. But he has a na'ar that is over the entire group that is harvesting his fields. And those harvesting fields comprised of men and women, of Na'ar and Na'ara. And the first thing he says is, "Who's that woman? Who does she belong to?" He's got a whole field full of women and men harvesting his field, and there's a corner of the field, and he goes immediately says, "Who's that woman? Who does she belong to?" And then he gives a long explanation of who she is. And then you find him talking to her, and the first thing he does is he poses these two negated verbs after a question. So, I just think it's always fascinating to try to unlock what's going on. It's to think it through. What's the reason this was written this way? And we always come to an understanding, but it's you're in the middle of the throes of it. It's a good challenge. None of it is ever made to be easy. The whole purpose is, I'm going to tell you a story that's essential to your understanding, that most people are going to completely trip over and not even notice that it's going on, and not even pay attention to who, like, for example, the Na'ar that are accompanying Abraham and Yishak, or why Noah just happened to pass away in exactly that year. And it just happens to be year 2000. Coincidence, of course. Most people just trip over it. They don't even bother to figure it out. But God put it in there knowing that when it was time to figure it out, we'd figure it out. And it's just a really interesting puzzle to put together. But this Leah thing is just so indicative. You wonder how hurtful it has to be for God to announce that he is the God of Abraham, Yishak, and Jacob, when they were really so horrible. And they were horrible. I think Jacob was the worst of the three, but they were all horrible. So I don't know. Maybe it's, there's that was it. It's going to be horrible people or nothing.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. We can work with any old dented implement that is willing to walk away. Maybe that's the part of it.
Yeah. Abraham did walk away, but then, he manipulated the system. Jacob was born away. Then he walked away from Israel to go to get his daughters, 14 years there. And he went back to servitude for them, and then was a jerk. So I don't. It's hard to see that he walked away, and Yishak was born, as separated from the whole thing. It's really a curiosity. I mean, the only thing you can assume is that we have been snits for a long time. We humans have not been very appealing.
Oh yeah,
and that these are far better than most humans. And if God says, "I'm going to have a relationship with humans," this is what I got to work with. And occasionally I'm going to go ahead.
I was just going to say that so much is not Esau. It's not really said about Esau, but he had to at least be in a position to take his brother in. So, I mean, even losing his birthright, he was still pretty well-to-do. It wasn't like he was, down on his luck and only had one. You're not going to go to your brother living in a trailer. You know what I'm saying? You're going to go to your, and ask for help. You're going to go to your brother and hang out if he's got a nice place, if he's got, lots of good things going on around him. He has the means to take care of you, So it is an odd thing that this idea that Jacob was he stole the blessing, yet still ends up on his brother's doorstep. Hey, can I hang out here with you? It's
yeah. I mean, it's the whole thing is just so weird. And of course, everybody wants to have that Jacob wrestled with God. Well, why would God want to wrestle with a man? What's the purpose of, wrestling with God is what created Judaism. Wrestling with God is what caused Yehudim to become Jews. Wrestling with God is what happened during the entire Exodus. It's why Israel was such a short-lived nation and has had such horrible experiences. That's wrestling with God. God doesn't want us to wrestle with him. He wants us to engage and endure with him. And so it's a very odd situation. My conclusion was always that he was wrestling with the adversary, and that it was, one of those things. He was down and out. I mean, he hallucinated a lot. He had a lot of fantasies, and that he was wrestling with the adversary and didn't give in to him. That was his one claim to fame. And when he didn't give in to the adversary, even though he was down and out, I said, okay, it's workable. We'll make this go as Yisrael. That's my conclusion on it. But everybody can draw their own. But one of the things we are going to ask Yahweh is to say, all right, now, fair enough. You can, I know what his retort's going to be, but what is it with Abraham and Ishak and Jacob and the 12 sons? Because the way you told the story, they aren't, and your story, and you're the one that told the story, and you certainly did not paint them in a very favorable light. So for me to say, these are really not very good people, I only draw that conclusion by what you wrote about them. What's going on here? And, I think the retort that I'm going to get is, look at my firstborn. He was worse.
Well,
he was
Shazak.
worse, and then he became better. So maybe the story is that even really bad can be, you can go from apathetic, which isn't good, to bad. And even then you can turn it around.
Yeah.
So
Well,
maybe,
and Yahweh
maybe
is-
that's the
is-
story.
Yahweh is Chazak, and part of that is being steadfast. When he says, "You're my firstborn, you're my guy," when he says, "You're my guy" to Abraham, you're my guy, for better or worse. As long as you do the right
But they
things.
But they didn't. They
Like-
didn't do the right thing. None of them did the right thing. And particularly Dowd.
Mhm.
Dowd did a lot of wrong, horrible things. Even Adam. So they didn't do the right thing. And Yahweh didn't overlook them doing the wrong thing. He held them accountable for it. So it's a story of there really aren't very many decent humans, and the story is, I'm going to show you that it's possible with even bad behavior that we can figure out something that makes this work. And through failure we can achieve success. That's why the whole concept of perfection is so stupid, because every player in God's story was hugely flawed. So the only moral lesson that you can learn is that no matter how flawed, if you're willing to see it through and come to embrace the truth in the end, that God will accept you.
Absolutely.
So
Do we are all queued up, ready for a Chinook episode of Luminaries today? I think we're
Yes,
turning the page
yeah.
into a new chapter. So
we are. We're going to talk about Chinook. There's first and second Chinook. That's a surprise to many people, and why
Yeah.
there was a first and second Chinook, and who did what to whom, and why there had to be then a second one, and who does Chinook become, and we'll transition from that into Noach and Shem, and what all that means, and then the great speaking role ultimately of what really happened in that tent that caused Noach to bless Shem and condemn his brother. So we'll talk about that, and that'll bring us to what really transpired in that 6 minutes on the shore of the Nile, and who were the players with the birth of Moshe. And then from there, we'll jump ahead to the story we're talking about right now, Ruth and Boaz. That is fascinating to be sure, and we're really getting in now to the interesting part, and it is it's the third chapter where we find that I'm your I'm going to deliver the kinsman redeemer to you, And what's interesting is the third chapter is about her declaration of being the Amma, but the fourth chapter is all about Gaal is the dominant theme of the fourth chapter of the kinsman redeemer. He's positioned throughout that chapter, so it'll be it's a lot of fun trying to first get an accurate rendering of the words, and then have an appropriate interpretation of the words as we try to apply them to our lives at this time, and what we would expect would have happened then, immediately thereafter, throughout time, these two individuals will be redeployed, and all the way to today. And you're going to come to appreciate, because this is one of the few places where the personalities are really developed. So you get to see the personalities of Ruth and Boaz through the story, and that first chapter is I'm sure you've read it now. The personality of Ruth is pretty extraordinary. She absolutely knew what was going on, and she's bold. But then the passage I've just translated, she falls flat on her face. She actually does bow before Boaz. And so when he has his little short discussion, you stay on this field, you don't go to any other field, you follow along behind my women. You probably be assured that I've told my men not to touch you. They draw the water, you drink the water. You stay here as long as you want. You don't go to any other field. That was overwhelming for her at the time. She had had a really rough life up to that point. And while that may not have sounded like a huge kindness, she viewed it so overwhelmingly so. She did a faceplant, and there's no other way to render the words. It is she nafal. Nafal, he panah, which means she fell on her face. And she has a chawa moment immediately thereafter. Chawa is used. So it is not what you would normally have expected. You'd expect a Boaz to say, no, come on, get up. I know who you are. And maybe that's what we're going to read next.
The redemption arc.
It is such an interesting story. And it's written unlike any other story. We are never told who the author is of that story, or how we came to that story. But I can tell you, it is written like no other story. There is no other story that's written like that. There's no other place where Yahweh is called by one of the main players in the story evil. But he is. He's called evil. He's called Ra'ah. So there's nothing else. I mean, it may be things written like it elsewhere, but there's nothing written like it anywhere. I've been doing this now for 25 years. I've never come across anything like this. So I am glad that we waited 25 years to translate it, because had no prayer to get through it. Otherwise, you just throw up your hands and say, what in the world are we dealing with here?
Right.
So it's kind of fun. I guess we'll take one more post here, and then we'll call it a day, and you get ready for tonight. Oh yeah, this is just the idiocy of politics and of religion. Yeah, this is, if she's got a clown nose on JFK, she's got Tricky Dick, I think, on her shirt next to that. She's got a Trump MAGA hat on. And so the interviewer says, do you believe that Trump was sent by God? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Of course, sure.
So, yeah, Satan. Yeah. Well,
what else could you conclude?
Okay, well, Yahweh did allow Satan to go into the garden to remedy the situation where the kids need to go out and earn a living on their own and get some grit. And so it's is it possible that that he is part of the plan? He happens to be Satan incarnate, but she would view him as sent by God to save America, when he is sent by possessed by Satan to destroy the world. And then he asked, "Do you think the Earth is flat?" She says yes. And she tries to give explanations as to why. Says, "You know, you're in an airplane. You can't fly over Greenland. You have to go around it."
Yeah. So where's she going with that? I heard her say that. And she also said it may not be flat, but it's concave.
Oh, yeah, it went for. I see. It was really fun. Well, I think it might be concave, not convex.
Yeah.
Concave. You know, have you ever seen the joke where graphically they have the sun and it's round, and then they have Mercury and it's round, and they have Venus and it's round, and then they have the Earth and it's pancake, it's flat, and then they have
Right.
Mars and it's round, and Jupiter and it's round, and Saturn and Neptune, and Uranus, and they're all round, and the one line from the Earth as well. This is
Kind of
peculiar.
awkward.
This is awkward. I think is right. This is awkward.
Mhm.
Hit the one flat one in the midst of all of them. Yeah, and it's interesting. You can take a picture from the moon, and of course it's you see that it
Marble.
that it is a marble. It is a sphere, and you can even see the way that the sunlight tries to wrap around the sphere and the shadows of it, and
That's right.
and it's it's just like the moon, which is a sphere. That's the same way that you see light on the going around the Earth, and so all of these pictures now of the Earth from space, and it's always a sphere, and the light coming from it is always shows it to be a sphere, and you never see it as a pancake. Why? Why is it never a pancake? And by the way, if it's a pancake,
Because it's not.
how would you have a right now?
it's a sphere.
You can. It depends on where you are in the world. You can either see the stars in the northern hemisphere and the stars in the southern hemisphere. And they're a different set of stars. One side you're looking that way, and the other side you're looking the other way. And how would you have a different perspective on stars if the Earth was flat? Are those the guys that are hanging on to the roots on the other side?
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
the number of times that I've flown around the world is probably 6-7 times. And trips where you start on one side, just keep on going, you come all around on the other side.
hmm
Why didn't we see the side where there's nothing? Why didn't we fly underneath how did that all happen?
Right. One
But I
continuous
guess if
left-hand
it's
turn, right?
yeah, but if it's concave, that would explain why the oceans are like they are, right? The water's not running off the edge;
gosh.
it's concave.
Right. Where does the water go?
Where does the water go?
Conspiracy theorists are really inferior thinkers. They can't think it through. She's like, "Oh, there's just a lot that's not explained." Okay, can you articulate it? One of them? Like, what are you hung up on?
Yeah, the problem with the conspiracy is they're dot on the wall kinds of people.
That's right.
Something that has not gone right in their life, and so they're looking for a way to justify how they are not responsible for the thing that has gone poorly in their life, and they want someone to blame typically, and they will go to conspiracies, and one of the conspiracies is flat Earth, and it's like chemtrails, another one of the conspiracies. And what they will always do, or 9/11 was an inside job by the U.S. government. What they will always do is they will ignore 1 billion pieces of evidence that show reality as it occurred, and they will cling to. And in a world where there are maybe billions and billions of potential ways to look at something, and they will find 2 or 3, 4 or 5 that out of context appear to show the opposite result, and they will only look at that 4 or 5, and they will promote that 4 or 5 and not bother to refute the billions or trillions or gazillions that show it the other way. And so you just say, if you're going to base a theory like the 9/11 on Building 8, because a plane didn't fly into it and yet it collapsed, and they're not capable of saying, well, that radio TV tower fell right into it, scarred it all the way down, destroyed all of the fire suppression systems, and we can analyze the really foolishness of the foundation of that building. It was actually built over existing structures that they tried to preserve in the subterranean areas of New York, and that the tremendous fires from the World Trade Centers ignited because it got so hot, ignited things within the building, and it melted what was already a very weak metal shell, and it cratered. And instead, they want it to be an inside job because they think there was an office of the CIA inside, and therefore the office of the CIA, even though they would have been the ones that planned it, had to be burned down to keep the evidence from coming out. And you say, what about the flight schools and the Muslims and the Allahu Akbar and the airplanes that were flown into the buildings? Well, that was a government plot. You really didn't see that. That really didn't happen. Inside job. And you go, okay. So the obvious has millions of points of evidence, and your theory has nothing but holes in it. But you're gonna promote the theory? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Flat Earth, the same thing. Yeah, I've been up at almost 50,000 feet in airplanes, and you can definitely see the curvature of the Earth. And I've been in airplanes at 25,000 feet, and you can't see the curvature of the Earth. So we're going to say, well, at 25,000 feet, I can't see the curvature of the Earth, so it must not be curved.
Yeah.
Huh? You're going to take a picture across a lake with different heating conditions where the rising waves of temperature variation will create the effect that we know as a mirage. And you're going to say, well, you can take a picture of a lake or of an ocean, and sometimes you don't see the mass disappearing last because a mirage, because of the way that it affects the air and water molecules in it, will create a lensing effect. And so you can get a picture or two that will do that. And so you're going to use that against billions and trillions of evidences contrary to it. Yeah, it's the dot on the wall. I'm going to prove my point, and I'm open to being proven false. And you could give them, it's like chemtrails. You could give them all proof of why chemtrails are stupid, and they'll still cling to it.
Yeah, they don't want the truth. I think, and I talked about this before with the stubborn thinking. They simply they don't want the truth. And it's whether it's religion or conspiracy, when you get stuck in that position, you don't, or politics, when you don't love the truth, and when you're not a pursuer of truth, and you don't see the value of actually being right and having truth, well, you're subject to whatever's going on, whether it's religious, conspiracy. You're going to be at the whims of those things.
Yeah, and to hold this woman's worldview together, the whole world has to be lying to him. So, flat Earth, Trump's representing God. America is a force for good. We won the war. Where do you stop?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is an example of why humanity is so fallen, why it's so out of touch with reality. And while she is an older woman trapped in both political and religious and conspiratorial malfeasance here, you go to the younger generation, it's Gen Z, and for the most part, they can't think themselves out of a wet paper bag. They are really crippled mentally.
They are, yeah.
So it's just a tragedy. Do you imagine trying to debate with a person like this, or trying to tell this, say, wait a minute, you want to believe that Trump was sent by God, and he lies with virtually every word, where he can't tell the truth to save his life, and you want to believe that he was sent by God? What God is that?
Mm-hmm.
They would send a committed liar. Who you want to believe that God sent a rapist and a pedophile? who was incestuous, who said, I'd like to have sex with my daughter, who had sex with all manner of underage girls, who was convicted of rape. You think that's God's man? Your God must be pretty impoverished. All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you for doing this. We're up at past the
Thanks,
2-hour mark. We're going to go back to trying to figure out the puzzle of Boaz
Back to
and
work.
Ruth. Yep. And I'm going to get back to my day job, and we'll do a Luminaries. As you're right, we're starting on Chinook. And he is a really interesting fellow. And most people don't bother. In fact, I saw a post the other day. I said that that chapter of Genesis is one that no one understands. Why do you have all these people living and dying, and just you're told their genealogy, and that's all you hear about them. And then with the Chinook, he is the exception. And then why before that are you told that Cain had a kid, and that this kid had a city that he built named after him, and that what was all of that? And then he has a whole story after him of who his descendants were and what they did. Why is that story told? It's a fascinating story, and the names of the people, and I don't think anyone's ever put the pieces together and say, well, this is who they are, this is what they did, and this is why that story is is told to us. And then after you get through that, then you have second Chinook, who God makes it really clear, this is somebody I like, this is somebody I'm going to take. And why would he take him if he wasn't going to redeploy him? And then you see it. All right, we're going to leave her. I think she does have a clown nose on JFK, does she not? And then she has Tricky Dick.
I think that's a dog tag. She's wearing a dog tag. Yeah, I got an expanded picture.
Why would JFK have a...
No, she's wearing a dog tag that's sitting over his nose, and it looks like a clown nose.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty hard to see in this little monitor that I have and off to the side.
Yeah, I got an expanded view.
Okay, so she's wearing a dog tag because,
Correct.
Of course, she had a dog tag. And it's possible, I guess.
Flat earthers, 2 hours of my life that I'm never getting back.
Trump, that's a Trump voter right there. That's the reason why democracy doesn't work.
Yes.
Those are the kind of people that are voting. So you want a democracy, you're going to have a huge percentage of the people that are voting. They're going to think that this most despicable man on the planet was sent by God and that the earth is flat. And those are the people that you think are doing a service to the world by voting.
Yeah.
I think not.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And who are they voting between? Look at this last election. An egomaniacal psychopath, or Cackles, who was a communist. And she had literally no work experience. She had never even asked if you want fries with that.
She even lied about that?
Yeah, she even lied about that, yeah. Her whole experience is she was a failure in the DA's office, and then she figured out she had other attributes that she could use to climb up the political ladder in California.
Ask Willie Brown.
Yeah, Willie Brown would be able to tell you all about it. And then they, we have, this is the problem of America, is you have lots of places where only one party exists. And therefore, the most extreme people that are part of that party get to denominate the most worthless people in the world. Look at the mayor of New York. Look at now the mayor that's going to be the mayor of DC. They are completely worthless human beings. And they get elected because, well, in the general election, they're outvoted by a huge margin because it's that region or that area, that city is so either Democratic or Republican that it's all matters just who won the primary. And, this last primary in the U.S., it's just disgusting who they put up. And, when you had Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, I mean, who are you going to vote for?
Right.
Who are you going to vote for? I mean, God. I mean, you had Biden and he was comatose. Is comatose better than crapatose? I don't know. I think crapatose is worse than comatose. I kind of long for the days of the man that had the ice cream cone fall in his lap.
Right. Yeah.
Would
we get what we
Cackles
deserve.
have been worse than Trump? No. Cackles would not have been worse than Trump. Would she have been horrible? Absolutely. Worse than Trump? No.
Yeah. Well, the more we congregate together, the worse we are. So that would, by that rationale, the cities would be the worst of us. They are the most Marxist cesspools of,
They are. And I wish people would have had the experience that I had, where they went through the Iron Curtain countries. They went into South Korea, when North Korea, when the worst part of the conflict, they went into the People's Republic of China. They saw it with and without free enterprise. They've, been in East and West Berlin, being the Soviet Union, when the time that it's imposed, you quickly learn that communism, socialism, Marxism is a really dark and horrible thing for humanity. Collectivized man is worse than individual men, based on gang mentality, and there's no fixing that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've already lost Will. His internet, I think, failed on him. Good to see you there, Kevin. We'll do a Luminaries later today, and we're going to say goodbye to Miss Flat Earth.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch y'all on our next podcast.